Hello. My name is Marigold Caro, and my family boarded a flight to London on Christmas morning, using my credit card. No goodbye. No apology. Just a note that read, "You wouldn't enjoy that flight. I used to think betrayal came loud. Turns out, it arrives in silence. And that silence? It started here. I woke on Christmas morning to a silence, so absolute it felt staged, like someone had unplugged the world while I slept. No cinnamon in the air. No soft hum of the radiator. No muffled footsteps moving around the house. Just a pale winter light cutting across my bedroom floor, sharp enough to sting. I lay still for a moment, letting the quiet press against my ribs. Something was wrong, and my body knew it before my mind caught up. I pushed back the covers, slid my feet into my slippers, and stood. Even the floorboards refused to creak under me, as if they, too, were holding their breath. Looking back now, I should have felt the warning in that stillness. That's where it all started. I walked into the hallway, expecting any sign of life. A voice, a shadow, a misplaced shoe. Nothing. Only the faint draft rolling down the stairs. When I reached the bottom, the kitchen came into view, too neat for Christmas morning. The table sat untouched, the same table where we'd shared 20 years of Christmas breakfasts, where my mother used to place a bowl of oranges for good luck, even though no one ever ate them. Today, only one thing sat in the center, a folded note resting under a ceramic mug I'd given her years ago. My stomach tightened. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. The paper felt cold, as if it had been waiting for me longer than it should. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was neat, practiced, the same cursive she used for birthday cards and church thank you letters. The words were short. Too short. You wouldn't enjoy that flight. No signature. No explanation. Just that one sentence acting like a door slammed softly in my face. My hands didn't shake. They only tightened around the note, as if my fingers were trying to find warmth in a message that offered none. I reread it, hoping I'd missed something, but it was the same every time. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. That's where it all started. I set the note down and reached for the coffee pot, forcing the morning into something familiar. Yesterday's brew sat at the bottom, stale and bitter. I poured it anyway, the smell hitting me with a dull ache. The quiet felt heavier with every sip. Out of habit, I reached for my phone and opened my banking app. I didn't expect anything unusual. I expected normal, whatever my version of normal had become. But the screen loaded slowly, then flashed a large charge at the top. 3 plane tickets to London. Purchased 2 days ago. My credit card. My name. The confirmation email had been sent to my inbox. They hadn't even bothered deleting it. My breath thinned in my chest. They didn't just leave. They used me to go. I clicked the email, scanning the details.
Departure time.
Baggage instructions. A cheerful line at the bottom. Have a wonderful holiday abroad. I let the phone rest against the counter as I steadied myself. There are different kinds of betrayal. Some feel like a slap. Others feel like a slow push toward the edge until you realize the drop is right behind you. This one was quiet.
Clean. Planned.
That hurt the most. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I opened the app settings. A small button glowed at the bottom of the screen, freeze card. I stared at it, remembering how many times I had covered their bills without being asked. How many times I had waved off their apologies or excuses. You're the dependable one, Mari. You always understand. Your brother has so much on his plate. Every line had been a brick stacked around me until I couldn't tell if they were protecting me or boxing me in. This morning gave me the answer. I exhaled once, steady and sure. Then I tapped the button. A soft click. No dramatic sound. Just a notification confirming the freeze. In the silence that followed, something inside me settled. Not peace. Not yet. But clarity. Merry Christmas to me. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I set the phone down and lifted the note again, folding it cleanly down the middle. The crease felt sharp beneath my thumb. My reflection in the kitchen window looked unfamiliar, shoulders tense, eyes tired but awake in a way they hadn't been in years. I left the kitchen and walked toward the guest room, the one space in the house that still felt untouched by family expectations. The drawer stuck slightly before sliding open, revealing a worn folder labeled Tax Records, 2018 to 2023. My fingers hovered over it. That folder held years of proof, years of me holding everything together quietly, without thanks, without notice. I picked it up, feeling its weight. It wasn't heavy, but it carried every moment I'd been the responsible daughter, the one who never asked for anything, the one who could be counted on to clean up the mess. Not today. Not anymore. I stepped back, holding the folder against my chest, the cold air brushing against my skin like a warning or an invitation. If they wanted a holiday without me, I'd give them exactly what that cost. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I moved through the house by memory alone, muscle memory, emotional memory. Every creak in the wood knew my name, though no one else here seemed to remember it. I reached the fireplace and crouched down, fingers brushing against the old matchbox I kept behind the logs. A thin layer of dust coated it. That matchbox used to sit on the mantel, right next to the cinnamon jar and the jar of dried cloves my mother insisted was just for scent. They weren't there this year. Nothing was. I struck a match, watched it flare. The flame flickered, dancing shadows across the bricks, but the warmth didn't follow. My eyes drifted toward the cabinet beneath the television. My mother's candle, the one she brought out every Christmas, a thick red pillar with a gold ribbon, was still there, tucked beside old VHS tapes and a chipped nativity figurine. Forgotten. Like me. I reached for it, fingers hovering over the wax. I could still smell the vanilla if I closed my eyes. She used to say it made the house feel like a home. I let my hand fall. They'd already decided what this house was. They didn't need my scent to finish the scene. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. Downstairs was colder, the air thinner. I went looking for extra blankets in the basement closet. The light bulb buzzed when I pulled the string. I scanned the shelves, already knowing what I'd find. Or what I wouldn't. One bin stood out. A large blue container, perfectly labeled. Callan Keepsakes. Inside, his varsity football jacket, 2 debate team trophies, a leather-bound baby photo album. Even his old science fair ribbon was there, still laminated. He'd come in second. My stomach clenched. My name wasn't anywhere, not on a bin, not on a label, not even scribbled in faded Sharpie. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I knelt beside the shelves, hoping, just hoping, I'd miss something. A folder, a box, a memory that hadn't been packed away like I didn't exist. But all I found was dust and cedar scent. Then it hit me hard and fast. My 15th birthday. The way my mother brushed past me in the hallway, shouting to Callan to grab your coat. We're going to dinner. They were celebrating his early acceptance letter to Columbia. I had said nothing. Just watched them leave. That night, I microwaved a Hostess cupcake and stuck a tea light in it. Lit it in the dark kitchen. Sang to myself under my breath. I never told anyone. They never asked. That's when the voicemail played in my mind, her voice sweet, almost scolding. We didn't forget, sweetie. You're just always so low maintenance. I used to wear that like a badge of honor. Now it felt like a muzzle. They'd translated my silence into permission, my self-sufficiency into disposability. I didn't cry. I just stood, dusted my knees off, and walked back upstairs. I passed the hallway where the Christmas stockings used to hang. My mother always used those brass hangers shaped like reindeer, one for each of us. But there were only two this year. Callan's and my parents'. Mine was nowhere. I told myself they forgot. But the dust rings on the mantel told another story. They'd polished around the two they left up. In the living room, I found a single ornament still in the bottom of a box, my baby footprint in clay, shaped like a bell. The year scribbled on the back, 1984. My father had made it with me when I was 2. He'd always said it was his favorite. That year, he let me pick the star for the tree. I held it in my palm for a long time before walking over to the bare fireplace. No tree this year. No decorations. No audience. I hammered a small nail into the brick and hung it right in the center. My eyes traced the lines of my footprint, tiny and curved like a question mark. I wasn't the problem. I was just inconvenient to the version of the family they preferred to present. It's not the forgetting that hurts. It's knowing they remember everything else. I left the fireplace behind and made my way to the kitchen, the soles of my slippers catching on the uneven tile where the grout had always needed resealing. I hadn't eaten since the night before, but my body wasn't interested in food. I reached for the coffee filter out of habit, then stopped. The trash can was full. Overflowing, actually. I pulled the lid up and paused. Right there, just under a balled-up grocery flyer, was a red envelope. My handwriting on the front. Smooth black ink, careful cursive. Addressed to Mom and Dad. It was the card I had mailed 5 days ago. Still sealed. I reached in, slowly, like I was touching something radioactive. The paper was wrinkled from the condensation of the milk carton it had been wedged beneath. I pressed it flat against the counter and stared. They hadn't even opened it. Not when it came in. Not before they left. Not after I had been erased from the trip. Looking back now, I should have expected it. But knowing it and seeing it are two very different things. My fingers tightened around the envelope. They didn't just go without me. They'd rejected the version of me that still believed in them. The phone rang in the other room. I let it ring twice before walking back into the living room. The screen read, Aunt Maylis. Hi, sweetheart. Her voice was all sunshine and vanilla. Merry Christmas. I thought you'd be with the family this year. Guess not, huh? I swallowed my words. Plans changed. Oh, well, they must be loving London. Your mom said it's so peaceful without all the stress. I think she said, let me remember. It'll be nice without Marigold overthinking things for once. Then silence. Just breathing. Oh, honey, I didn't mean. It's okay, I said, already pulling the phone from my ear. I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. You know how your mom talks when she's planning big things. I smiled into the air. I do. Have a good day, Maylis. I hung up before she could dig the hole deeper. I stood there in the middle of the room, the weight of that unopened envelope still clinging to my fingers. Some people don't stab you in the back. They fold paper with practiced hands, toss it in the trash, and call it kindness. I sat on the bottom stair, holding the envelope in my lap, trying not to crumble it. I'd spent 2 hours choosing that card. One that didn't say too much, but still felt like me. I had tucked a handmade ornament inside, a small painted ceramic circle with our last name on it, done in gold ink. The kind of thing you hang once a year and forget is handmade. I remember smiling when I sealed it, like I was still auditioning for a seat at their table. I remember the night I mailed it, standing in the post office line, watching a couple in front of me debate stamps. The woman said, just pick anything. We're not printing wedding invites. I smiled, thought to myself, this is the year I won't hold back. I thought wrong. My fingers traced the edge of the envelope again, and another memory surfaced. like a bruise I hadn't realized was still tender. Last Christmas, Callan had wrapped all the gifts in coordinated paper, white and silver. He even made custom tags. My mother gushed. He has such an eye, such elegance. And then, Marigold just sends receipts. She laughed when she said it. So did Callan. I did, too, because that's what you do when you're the joke, before you realize you're also the punchline. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I needed air. I walked to the front porch, envelope still in hand. The sky was a dull gray, the kind that made everything feel a little heavier. Snow clung to the railing. The neighborhood was quiet except for a distant lawn decoration spinning in the wind. I stood there, not sure what to do with the envelope. Burning it felt too dramatic.
Keeping it felt masochistic.
So, I set it gently on the porch swing and walked back inside. I wasn't going to forget this. Not this time. I went upstairs to clear my mind, maybe distract myself. I opened the hallway cabinet where my mother stored all the random things she couldn't part with, but never used. Old candles, expired coupons, empty perfume boxes. In the very back, wedged between a stack of holiday napkins and an old DVD box set of Murder, she wrote, I found a planner. Soft leather, maroon. My mother's handwriting on the inside flap. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. I opened it. There it was. A tab marked London trip. 6 weeks ago. Page after page of detailed notes. Flight numbers. Hotel reservation codes. Dinner spots she'd circled in blue ink. Even a packing list. 2 scarves, one for Callan, one matching with Celine. Then, on a yellow sticky note stuck between the pages, Callan prefers aisle seat. Tell Marigold we'll talk after. That wasn't an oversight. That was premeditated. I closed the planner slowly. It felt warm in my hands, despite the chill of the room. I tucked it under my arm and walked back downstairs. On the counter, the envelope still sat where I had left it. Next to it, I laid the sticky note. Side by side, they told a story even words couldn't. She had planned the whole thing, and planned to lie about it later. My laptop was already open on the table. I sat down, cracked my knuckles, and opened a new tab. Typed one word into the search bar.
Freeze.
They didn't want me there.
Fine.
But they can't keep using me here either. The tab was still open when the notification appeared, a soft, forgettable ding that didn't match the weight it carried. My eyes flicked to the corner of the screen, where the insurance company's logo hovered next to the words, Update to emergency contact information. I blinked once, then again. I clicked the link without thinking, not because I didn't expect anything, but because deep down I already knew. The page loaded slowly, like it was trying to shield me from the truth. But the truth didn't need help breaking me open. Primary emergency contact. Callan W. Caro. I felt it in my chest before I understood it in my brain. I was no longer the person they trusted in crisis. Not that trust had ever been the currency they paid me with, but still, I had paid the premiums.
I had set up the accounts.
I had walked my father to the ER at 2 a.m. while Callan sent texts saying, Let me know how it goes. Now I was removed.
Replaced.
I didn't gasp. I didn't even flinch. My jaw simply locked, and I felt the muscle there ache. I whispered, low and even, I'm still paying the premiums. I opened the folder beside me. Financial logs, account statements, auto drafts. The numbers stared back at me like they knew what was coming. 3 monthly payments, $681.23 each, charged directly to my personal checking. The last charge? 2 days before they boarded the flight to London. Looking back now, I should have canceled that card months ago. I scrolled to the footer of the email. A line in gray font read, If you believe this change was unauthorized, Contact us immediately. I hovered over the link, but I didn't click. Not yet. A vibration broke the silence. My phone buzzed against the wood of the desk, screen flashing.
Kellen.
I should have let it ring, but curiosity, or maybe foolish hope, made me swipe to open. Hey, he started, his voice light. Just wanted to say Merry Christmas. Don't take things too seriously, okay? I said nothing. I know you saw the insurance thing. It's easier this way. You've always made stuff complicated. This way, Mom and Dad can relax. My fingers clenched around the phone. So you replaced me. Quietly. Legally. He exhaled, like I was the one being unreasonable. It's not like that. We didn't want to put pressure on you. No, I said, voice flat. You just wanted to keep using me without the inconvenience of acknowledging me. There was a pause. Then he said, You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. I hung up. Not because I was done, but because if I didn't, I'd start saying things that would make me sound like the problem. I sat in silence for a long moment, then opened a new document. Title: Financial Support Log, Caro Family 2017, present. I typed the first line. January 5th, 2017, insurance enrollment, $400 setup fee, $189 per month direct pay. I didn't stop. I let the numbers do what words couldn't. I let receipts become sentences. Charges became paragraphs. Dates and figures replaced every unspoken insult. Every, you're just so independent. Every, we didn't think you'd want to be involved. I didn't realize it then, but that spreadsheet would become my voice. That's where it all started. Another ping. An automated email from the health portal. This one was shorter. Just a confirmation of the change. No apology. No room for discussion. At the bottom, it said, signed by Edric Caro. My father. My father who once told me, Mari, you're the one I'd trust if something ever went wrong. I stared at the name. I read it 5 times. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because a part of me finally did. The silence wasn't an oversight. It was a statement. I opened my phone again and typed a message to Callan. You removed me from the list. I still pay the bills. Why? No reply. Of course. I left the phone face down and returned to the document. February 2020, property tax on secondary home, covered after Dad's surgery, $1,872. I didn't need an argument. I needed a ledger. That was my power now. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. The mug shattered on impact, sending white porcelain shards across the driveway like tiny bones. I didn't flinch. I just watched them settle, glinting under the faint porch light. That mug had my name on it once. Not in paint or print, but in memory. It had lived on the bottom shelf for years, chipped, slightly crooked mine. Until last week, when I found it tucked behind the blender, like a leftover no one knew what to do with. I stood there barefoot on the cold cement, toes numbing in the snowmelt. My breath fogged the air in slow clouds. There was no applause. No just a song playing in the background. Just a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes when something ends without ceremony. I stepped over the shards and went back inside. That's where it all started. I returned to my desk and reopened the banking app. The screen glowed softly, waiting. I clicked through every account connected to me: utilities, mortgage support, joint credit cards, emergency funds. One by one, I clicked freeze. No dramatic music. No alarms. Just digital confirmations and the quiet hum of my radiator in the background. This isn't revenge, I said to no one. This is accounting. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. 15 minutes later, my inbox dinged. Subject line: Merry Christmas, darling. The sender, Celine Caro. I opened it slowly. The message was short, airy. We're so glad you were able to rest this holiday. I knew you'd understand. Quick note. Can you clear the Amex by the 27th? We're short on funds until then. Love you. I stared at the words, not because they shocked me, but because they didn't. My hand moved to the mouse, but I didn't click. I just let the cursor hover over her name. They hadn't spoken to me in 3 days. Not a call, not a text. But they remembered the due date on the credit card.
Of course they did.
Even now, they think I'll keep paying because I always have. I whispered it to myself like a confession. I closed the email and stood, suddenly needing air. My legs carried me into the kitchen, where the warmth clung faintly to the stovetop. I opened the cabinet where we kept the mugs. For remained Callan's, with the university logo still glossy after all these years. My father's old, world's best dad cup. My mother's floral porcelain one from her bridal set, and mine, the chipped white one that had just shattered on the driveway. The space where it had always sat was now empty. I reached inside, touching the back wall of the cabinet, as if trying to prove something to myself. The memory came quick, me, 17, handing my mother a box with trembling fingers. Inside, a full tea set I'd saved for my job at the diner. I had wrapped each cup in tissue paper and written a note. For when you want to rest. I'll do the dishes. She'd smiled, then passed it to the neighbor at brunch, saying, Callan picked this out. Isn't he thoughtful? I laughed then. I always laughed. But this memory didn't make me smile now. Looking back, I should have seen how many times I'd been erased before they ever left for London. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I returned to my laptop, opened her email again, and hit reply. My fingers moved calmly across the keys. I'm not clearing the balance. You might want to check with the card holder. No signature. No warmth. No regret. I hit send. I closed the laptop and walked toward the coat rack. No jacket. Just the cold, and me, and the weight of something final. Outside, the wind had picked up. It scraped against the windows, trying to get in. I stood at the top of the driveway, barefoot again, where the broken pieces of the mug had scattered. They glinted up at me, like tiny truths I'd tried not to see for too long. I didn't sweep them up. I didn't gather them. I simply turned and walked back inside. The warmth of the house felt thinner when I stepped back inside, as if the walls had finally stopped pretending they could protect me. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, letting the quiet settle over my shoulders. My feet ached from the cold. My hands were stiff. But something in me felt sharper than it had that morning, as if each revelation carved away the softness I used to carry. I moved toward my bedroom, drawn by a feeling I couldn't name, like the air itself was leading me somewhere I hadn't gone in years. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of the street lamp outside. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. I reached for it slowly, already bracing myself. Another fraud alert. The words were blunt, clinical. Unusual transaction detected. $15,000 transfer to Callan's Roast Company. My throat tightened. I read the sentence again. Then again. The number didn't change. The account name didn't change. The sinking weight in my chest didn't change. $15,000. From the joint account labeled House Repairs. The one I funded when the roof needed patching last spring. The one my mother insisted should stay ours because it was simpler that way. The transfer had gone through 2 weeks ago, around the time they booked the London flights. My stomach churned. They didn't just take me off the insurance. They used me to fund the air. I stood there, holding the phone like it might burn through my palm. A buzzing filled my ears, not sound, but realization. Every time I thought I had reached the bottom, a new floor gave way. I found myself moving toward the kitchen without thinking, toward the junk drawer that had always been a strange vault of forgotten things, wrinkled menus, mismatched screws, old chargers that belonged to phones long discarded. I dug through it with both hands, searching for something I didn't know I'd left behind. My fingers brushed paper.
Thick. Glossy.
When I pulled it out, I felt the breath leave me. It was the family Christmas card from last year. The original version. All four of us smiling in coordinated sweaters, standing by the tree I decorated alone while my parents shopped with Callan. My face was there, centered next to my father. But the version they sent out this year, the one I'd seen taped to my mother's fridge 2 days before they left, my face had been cut out.
Cleanly. Seamlessly.
As if I had never stood there. As if they had written me out of the story long before they wrote the London itinerary. A perfect photo. No marigold. Looking back now, I should have seen that edit for what it was. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. I set the old card on the counter. My phone buzzed again. A text from Callan earlier still sat unanswered, but now another message arrived from my mother. We landed safely. Hope you're relaxing. Don't forget to water the plants. She didn't mention Christmas.
She didn't mention me.
She didn't mention the $15,000. I opened a new text thread. Typed slowly. Thank you for investing my money into Callan's dream. Next time, try asking the investor. I attached a picture of the cropped Christmas card, the version where my face had been scrubbed out like a stain. Then I hit send. No dots appeared. No reply. No apology. That silence? It finally sounded honest. I walked back to my bedroom, heart pounding slow and heavy in my chest. The closet door hung slightly open. Something inside felt unfinished. I pulled the cord to the top shelf and brought down a small box coated in dust. The handwriting on the lid made my breath hitch. Dad's handwriting. I sat on the floor, legs folded beside me, and lifted the lid. Inside were letters, all written in the looping script my father had used before arthritis stole his ease. Birthday notes, grocery reminders, apologies for missing performances, gratitude for dinners I'd cooked. At the bottom, folded neatly, was one letter I'd forgotten. You're the steady one, Mari. Not the loudest, but the one we count on. My throat tightened. My fingers brushed the ink as if it might fade if I breathed too hard.
They always saw my value.
Just never enough to honor it. Never enough to choose me over convenience. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, because the tears felt too small for the size of the truth settling inside me. I held the letter a moment longer before reaching for the folder of bank statements on my bedside table. The red highlighter I'd grabbed earlier lay beside it. I placed the letter next to the stack, side by side, love and ledger, memory and math. For the first time in my life, they looked the same. Evidence. I picked up the highlighter and uncapped it. Every line I marked was another layer peeled back. Another lie confronted. Another place where my generosity had been treated like an obligation. They had taken so much because I had let them. I looked at the letter again, running my thumb across my father's words. They felt lighter now. Not because they meant nothing, but because I finally understood what they were worth and what they were not. I folded it carefully and placed it atop the statements I'd printed. My hand stilled there, flat and certain. I gave them everything, thinking it was love. Now, I'll take back what's mine, starting with the truth. The next morning came without color. Gray light spilled across the hardwood, dull and cold, as if even the sun wasn't sure it wanted to be here. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug I hadn't touched. The warmth had faded. So had the taste. But I held it anyway, something to anchor the weight in my chest. My phone buzzed. breaking the quiet. The screen lit up with 3 words that shouldn't have surprised me, but still knocked the breath from my lungs. "Mom is calling." I stared at it. The notification pulsed once, twice. Against every instinct, I answered. The screen flared to life, revealing champagne glasses, flickering candles, laughter. So much laughter. Celine was in a silk blouse I didn't recognize, her hair curled, voice bright and brittle. "Darling," she sang. "We just wanted to say hi." Behind her, Callan lifted a glass and clinked it against someone's off-screen flute. "Cheers to quiet holidays," he grinned. "Finally." Celine giggled. "Isn't it so peaceful this year?" The call lasted 27 seconds. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. They hadn't called to hear me. They called to remind me they were just fine without me. I ended the call. No words. No anger. Just that widening space between us. No longer a gap, but a canyon. That's where it all started. Later that morning, there was a soft knock at my front door. I opened it to find Ruth, my neighbor, holding a foil-wrapped dish that smelled faintly of nutmeg and something sweet. "Thought you might like some pumpkin custard," she said. "It's one of those comfort desserts." I thanked her, even smiled. Ruth didn't deserve the iciness trapped behind my ribs. She lingered, eyes flicking toward the living room. "You know," she added casually, "Celine told me you'd been so stressed lately. Said you chose to stay behind this Christmas, to rest, so you wouldn't bring down the mood." My stomach twisted. "Is that so?" Ruth touched my arm gently. She meant well, I'm sure. I nodded, even as bile rose in my throat. Of course she did. They didn't just lie to me. They lied about me. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. I closed the door behind Ruth and walked back to the kitchen. The custard sat untouched. I had no appetite. A half-hour later, the mail arrived. Among the usual circulars and end-of-year catalogs was a thick envelope embossed with the law firm's name, Wilkins and Dorn LLP. I knew before I opened it. The letter was typed, formal, cold. "This notice serves as confirmation that effective immediately, Marigold E. Caro has been removed as an authorized co-owner on the following accounts." The list was long. The reason? Concerns regarding recent emotional instability and potential financial mismanagement, cited in the interest of long-term well-being. It was signed not by a stranger, but by my father. Beneath the legal language, a handwritten note trailed at the bottom. "This is in your best interest.
Please rest.
Love, Dad." I didn't rest. I walked straight to my office nook and powered on the printer. The fan kicked up with a low whine as I started feeding documents through. Every payment, every date, every signature. I photographed the Christmas card, the edited one. Scanned the letter I'd just received. Opened Excel and began building a spreadsheet, column by brutal column. Date, transaction, purpose, paid by. This wasn't grief anymore. This was evidence. That's where it all started. I moved like a prosecutor. Not out of vengeance. Out of necessity. I pulled old bank statements from my email archives, highlighted the payments I'd made for Callan's tuition, Celine's cosmetic procedures, their anniversary trip to Palm Springs. No more silence. No more patience. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. It was about truth. I drafted an email. Subject line, Statement of Record, Caro Financial Abuse. My fingers hovered above the keyboard before I typed the opening line. To whom it may concern, and to those who should have known better. The driveway looked the same. Same cracks in the pavement. Same uneven bricks along the front step I'd once tripped on carrying groceries when Mom called from the porch. Watch where you're going, Marigold. This time, I watched.
No suitcase in my hand.
Just a folder, plain, beige, thick with proof. I rang the doorbell once, then opened it without waiting. The key was still on my chain, that they hadn't thought to revoke.
Yet.
Inside, the kitchen glowed in warm tones of cinnamon and soft yellow light. Garlands still hung over the archway. The holiday centerpiece on the table hadn't moved. Red berries, plastic pine needles, a single white candle. And there they were. Celine sat at the table, phone in hand, glasses perched low on her nose. Edric, in his fleece-lined slippers, looked up from the newspaper like he hadn't just signed my financial rights away yesterday. Callan leaned against the fridge, sipping coffee from the mug I once gave him with the words "best brother ever" in faded font. No one said a word. I walked in. My boots thudded softly against the floor. I didn't bother removing them. Then, slowly, I placed the folder on the table, sat down, flipped it open. I didn't speak. I let the numbers do it for me. One page, then another, each document placed in a silent rhythm. Transaction logs, check images, medical bills, electric statements, property tax receipts, transfers,
Names.
amounts,
Dates.
They watched me, at first with confusion, then discomfort, finally dread. Total, $93,774.19. Callan cleared his throat. This feels like a misunderstanding. I didn't look up. I turned one more page. 3 plane tickets to London. Purchased using my card. December 3rd. Celine finally spoke. We didn't ask you to do those things, Marigold. I raised my eyes, looked her dead in the face. You didn't have to. You expected it. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I pulled a second sheet, highlighted in pink. December 15th, transfer to Callan's Roast Company. Business account, $15,000. Callan stepped forward. I didn't know she used your account. And yet, I interrupted, you always benefited. His face fell. I slid one last page across the table. A printed photo. The family Christmas card from last year. Me cropped out. I found this version taped to the fridge. I said, minus my face. I suppose that's what peace looks like. Nobody moved. I could have said more. I had plenty. But I'd learned the most cutting thing I could do was stop just short of explaining. I reached into my folder again. This time for something heavier. This, I said, laying a notarized paper before them, is the revocation of any financial power of attorney you held. Effective immediately. Celine blinked rapidly. You're being dramatic. No, I said evenly. I'm being accurate. I turned to Callan, slid one more envelope across. This is a reimbursement request. $50,000. Or, if you prefer, you can sign over the deed to the lake cabin. The one you claim I never use. Edric finally spoke. Quiet, measured, like he always was when he realized he'd misjudged the depth of something. You're serious. I stood. I'm finished. They didn't stop me. Maybe they didn't know how. Maybe they were too stunned. Or maybe, deep down, they finally recognized the cost of decades of quiet expectation. At the door, I paused. No theatrics. No tearful glances. Just a sentence, cool, clipped, final. Next Christmas, don't bother writing me a note. I won't be reading it. The drive north felt shorter than it ever had. Maybe it was the stillness in my chest. Maybe it was the absence of waiting, for an apology, for a rescue, for someone to decide I was finally worth the truth. Snow framed the trees in soft white lace. The cabin waited, silent and untouched, nestled between tall pines like a memory someone else had left behind. But it was mine now. Legally. Officially. The paperwork had arrived 2 days ago, signed and sealed. They chose the cabin. Easier than cutting a check. Cleaner. No apologies. No calls. Just silence. I stepped inside, dropping my bag by the door. The smell of pine and dust greeted me, familiar and grounding. I moved through the space slowly, fingers trailing the edge of the counter, the old stone hearth, the shelves I'd once helped my father stain. It was bare, peaceful, and fully mine. I lit the fire with practiced hands. The wood crackled into life, smoke curling up the chimney as if exhaling for me. I stood there a moment longer than necessary, letting the warmth reach through the wool of my sleeves. That's where it all started. The box marked upstate, spare linens, was the last one I hadn't unpacked. It sat under the window bench, tucked beside an old lamp and the emergency flashlight. When I opened it, I wasn't looking for anything in particular, which made finding it worse. The envelope was yellowing, edges curling slightly with age. In Celine's handwriting, it read, "For next year." I recognized it immediately. A promise written 4 years ago, back when hope still lived in the spaces between us. Back when I still believed in next year. Inside a single sheet, her words were light, looped in blue ink. "You pick the destination next Christmas. Just you and me, okay?" I read it twice. Then once more. It didn't sting the way I thought it would. Not anymore. I held it between my fingers, stared at the handwriting that once made me feel chosen, and whispered, quietly, to no one but the flames, "You broke this long before London." I didn't burn it. I didn't cry. I folded it carefully, slid it into the back pocket of my notebook, and turned toward the kettle. Tea simmered on the stove soon after, chamomile, no sugar. I poured a cup and carried it to the window, the steam warming my lips as I opened my journal and began to write. They mistook silence for weakness, but silence was where I grew roots. The pen moved on its own after that. Not angry, just steady. Outside, the snow began again, soft and unhurried. There was a knock at the door an hour later. I opened it to find Ruth standing with a pie in her gloved hands. She didn't say anything, didn't ask questions. She just handed it to me and nodded. I nodded back. That was enough. Later, after the dishes were rinsed and the fire restoked, my laptop dinged.
Kellen.
Subject: no excuses. The message was short. I didn't know how bad it got. I don't expect anything, but I do see it now. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. No reply. That's where it all started. Before bed, I took a walk down the back trail. The moon hung low, painting the snow in pale silver. I carried the envelope in my coat pocket. When I reached the base of the largest pine, I knelt. No ritual. No ceremony. I buried the letter in the snow-covered soil. Pressed the earth down gently. No marker. Just release. Forgiveness isn't always a door swinging open. Sometimes, it's just choosing not to knock anymore. There's no need to add more to the ending, because it already landed where it needed to. Forgiveness isn't always a door swinging open. Sometimes, it's just choosing not to knock anymore. But here's what I'll ask you. Have you ever paid the price to keep a family from falling apart, and then realized you were the only one breaking? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if this story stirred something in you,
Subscribe.
there's more truth coming.